What are INFJs like at parties? That's an interesting question, which we'll try to address now. I think there's there's four different ways. Four different ways that INFJs can be at parties, not just one way, but four ways. The most obvious way that they can be at parties is to be non-existent. That is to say that they would just avoid said parties because they don't feel like mingling with a lot of other people where you know kind of in advance that most of the conversations and interactions you're going to have are going to be insubstantial and fleeting and not very engaging. You know, people are there to have some fun. They're not really there to have substantial conversations. So it's agreed on the part of most people at the party that the mood ought to be light, and INFJs are not always good at being light, nor do they necessarily seek it, right? And sometimes when they do seek it, it will be as part of a smaller group of people than a party. There's also the fact that when you're at a party, there's a lot of things that you don't control, the way it might happen, may develop. Maybe people will be heading somewhere else and you kind of have to follow them, or the music will be very loud, or there might be lots of different aspects that are out of the INFJ's control. And I think that's because INFJs are not necessarily attuned to these large-scale parties in the first place. They may just want to avoid taking those risks. So that's the first one. Now, there's three other ways that INFJs can be at parties, but these reflect the typology of INFJ's subtypes that I have proposed in this book, right? The Infinite Soul, which, by the way, if you want to have a look at it, it's my new book on the INFJ, The Infinite Soul. It's the sequel to the Ecstatic Soul, which is here. This is analysis of INFJ consciousness. This is a discussion, an exploration of the ways an INFJ can be in the world today, in leading a life that's fulfilling, meaningful, and rich. So get those books if you haven't yet. They're doing really well. They're being very well reviewed. Less than $10. All links are below. So in this book, I propose to have a classification of INFJ modes of life. So you understand, I'm not dividing between different types of INFJ consciousness like I would in this book, but more like the ways that an INFJ can choose to relate to others and the world around them. It's a matter of choice, right? There's an existential dimension, which is why I call my approach Jungian existentialism, and why, if you subscribe to my Patreon, there's a link below. Thank you so much to my recent supporters, because basically I'm starting to think that, with a bit more help, I'll be able to really keep going with the channel. So thank you so much. I'm really, really grateful. But anyway, so if you subscribe for like €3 a month, $3.5, anywhere from that, of course you can give more if you want, you'll become officially a certified Jungian existentialism. There's ways that you can choose to be an INFJ, right? It's also up to you to be the kind of INFJ that you want to be. It's not entirely the result of your particular psychological makeup. This explores the Ecstatic Soul explores this. In the sense, it explores your base material that you cannot change, right? This explores what you have an influence over. What kind of INFJ do you want to be? And that is going to be reflected in the kind of behavior an INFJ will have at a party if they do attend said party. Like I said, the first likely event is that they find an excuse not to attend it. But of course, lots of INFJs attend lots of parties. There's no doubt. So the number one is what I call, in the Infinite Soul, the adapted submissive INFJ, right? So it's an INFJ who choose to lead their lives in relative, what would you call it? Stifling, right? A stifling of the INFJ identity that they possess, atrophied, right? They try to hide their strangeness because they're really, really eager to be accepted by people and to lead a normal life, without conflict. So they adapt to others, and in a sense, they submit to others, and usually sacrifice the unique tone of strangeness that tends to come with NI, their NI, because everybody's NI dominant is unique, right? So, of course, these will be the INFJs that you will barely identify as INFJs at a party because they'll do everything they can to conceal it and to usually be yes people and try to get on with everybody at the party. So sometimes you might confuse them with, say, maybe S types, right? Because they're very willing to just talk about anything that people are talking about. The primary thing they want is to get on. Even prior to even understanding whether they're really enjoying being at this party, they just want there to be no conflict, right? That's the adaptive INFJs. So again, you might not even realize they're INFJs because they're so busy fading into the background. There's a video that Frank James made back in the day called the INFJ Fade, where he talks about this phenomenon where INFJs inevitably fade socially. And he explained why, and what this book argues, the Infinite Soul. So it's a choice. You can fade, but you don't have to, right? It's up to you, really, if you decide to fade or not, if you decide to be submissive or not. The second kind of INFJ that you might meet at a party, although they're much more likely to blend into the first category of not going to an event, is what I call the solipsistic INFJ, often more nihilistic. They tend to be very, very involved in their NI view of things, worldview, and they're the most judgmental of other people. So often we have this cliche of an INTJ being at a party and secretly or not so secretly calling other people idiots and being like, okay, I'm wasting my time, or enjoying spending an hour just judging everyone and consider them to be inferior beings. This can happen with an INFJ solipsist. They tend to be distrustful of others and judgmental of other superficiality. That's because in a sense, they live in a world where they have rejected the external world and other people. They are the obverse, or the flip side of the adapted submissive. In a sense, they're not leading a better life because their sense of who they are is defined by rejection of others, right? In the same way that, or in a flip side way to the way adapted INFJs see themselves as completely shaped by others. So they're two sides of the same not so healthy coin. And finally, the one that hopefully I have been throughout my life, because I have attended many parties, but is the liberated INFJ. Not that I would claim I'm a completely liberated INFJ, but I think insofar as parties have been concerned, I've been okay. Is the INFJ who's there, they choose to go to certain parties, and from the moment that they've decided to go, they go there and they're themselves. And they get on with people because they have subtle, harmonious FE, but they're not shy to express their strangeness. And so if some people are going to joke and say, oh, like what you said is kind of strange, or you're a strange fella, or, sometimes people would joke that I am on the spectrum, for example. This has happened to me. It's not necessarily nice, but the thing is, usually these INFJs are very at peace with the way they are, and they decide that they're going to have some fun, get on with people, but by no means hide the way they are. They're defined by very noticeable self-acceptance, which means that even if other people find them a bit different, they cannot help but respecting this level of self-acceptance and even be brought to appreciate what that INFJ can bring in. So obviously that's the INFJ you want to be at a party, really. And I call it the liberated INFJ. You can learn more in this book. Okay, so that was for my typology, my classification of 4 types of INFJs at parties. 1 non-existent, and 3 types: submissive, solipsistic, and liberated. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I will see you at the weekend, guys. Bye-bye.